Episode 2, it's Deals and Deadlines. That's the man, Hadley Engelhardt. I'm your friend, Matt, as we take you around the business of sports, talk about all the big things going around these days. Now, we have a busy program for you today. Adam Schefter, the ultimate NFL insider, will join us later. We're going to pick his brain about how one gets to his position, the relationships he has with teams, and the social media element, which we can monetize these days. What does that mean to Adam Schefter? We'll pick his brain about that. Plus, we'll talk to Scott Carr. He's the athletic director for FIU. I want to talk to him about the differences in the big brands, right? The Power 4 conferences as opposed to an FIU, how you go about building the business of college athletics. He'll join us coming up. But Hadley, there are a lot of things we have to cover here in the meantime, including the NFL trade deadline, which just passed. And I saw some numbers, and I wanted to share them with you since you're a highfalutin agent, that we've seen more movement in this space in the last 5 or 6 years than maybe we've ever seen before. So in 2020, we had 15 players who were dealt before the deadline. 2016, we saw 16. We saw it reach a high of 22 players moved in 2022, and this past deadline, 19 players. What was the pivot that we started to see more teams being open to making moves like this?
I think what's happening now is teams and owners are realizing that at some point halfway through the season, where they're going to end up as far as the playoffs go. And so it's time to look at not just the present, but the future as well. The bottom line, money, wins and losses. And so I think there's a lot of different variables that come into play. I just think I'll tell you what's surprising to me is not the trades. It's more that we're seeing trades within the same division or the same conference.
Yeah, those rules seem like they're gone.
Back in the day, it was if you're going to make a trade of any sort, you were going to go out of conference, right? A team that you'll never face unless you make it to the Super Bowl. Now you're seeing it happen on a regular basis where they're trading to rivals. And so that's the surprising thing. But at the end of the day, you've got to do what's right for your roster. You got to do what's right for the bottom line. Mm-hmm. And I think owners are getting more involved with the bottom line numbers. I mean, they're making a lot of money, but they also have to look at the salary cap and decide, all right, what direction are we going in and how do we move forward positively for our franchise?
Seems like also we got to a place where teams are open and okay with dead money. Like, now, maybe not huge dead money at the trade deadline, but just in general, it feels like we've gotten to a place where a team is, all right, we're admitting it didn't work. Instead of staying stubborn and drawing it out, we're going to eat the dead money. In this case, maybe we'll get something back, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and we'll move on that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see when they see a trade that there's a winner and a loser. And there really isn't, because the team that's trading a player may not really want to trade that player, but that player may be in the last year of his contract, or if they don't want to release him because then they eat up more dead money. So there's a way that they're looking at the finances of it. And you're right. They're looking at, the overall cap, and everyone has dead money. We've talked about being in the agent business, you get fired sometimes. It's part of the business. Well, eating up dead money is part of any sport. And so in football in particular, it's important to understand that teams are trying to not only look at 2024, 25, 26, they have to think in the future and look at the overall salary, what's being spent. And remember, signing bonus, you've already spent that money. So eating up dead money is more of a cap number than it is actual dollars.
All right, let's talk about the college football playoff, which at the time of this recording, we have the first now initial playoff rankings, and they're going to mean nothing ultimately, but I think it's a roadmap. Hadley, I think it's a roadmap into something that's a little bit different for a lot of us that we're going to have to wrap our heads around. And we know on the field what it's going to mean, but I want to talk about sort of the business side of this, the fans' involvement. So I was looking at the 5 through 12 rankings just based on this first release.
Non-buys.
Right. So, for instance, in round 1, Ohio State on campus would host Boise State on December 20th or 21st. Same weekend, you would have number 8 seed Tennessee hosting Indiana in Knoxville. You would have number 6 seed Texas hosting Bama on campus in Austin. You would have Penn State and Happy Valley hosting Notre Dame. Now, it's great for the TV part of this, right? They have content. Correct. The playoff games, those are great. But this is going to be different for fans who have invested in season tickets and make their donations. Now you're going to have to do more if you want to be the fan that comes to see your team on campus and then maybe travel 2 or 3 times. I mean, people are going to be, that Christmas money is going to go quick.
It is. And I think when they obviously came up with this, the last person they're really thinking about is the fan.
Always.
Right? I mean, they're thinking about the TV revenue. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. But, exactly. I mean, you could potentially follow a team, be on the road at a home game or an away game, spend money to go there a whole weekend, then you win. Then the next week you're home or away, and if you live in a different city, you're traveling again.
Well, remember
that again.
That second when we get to the quarterfinals, you're talking about bowl games working in.
Correct.
So you're going to New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl. You're going to Arizona for the Fiesta Bowl. You're going to Atlanta for the Peach Bowl. Now the travel just continues.
Correct. And, and at the end of the day, at what point are fans going to say, I mean, listen, there will be some fans that are fanatics,
right,
and they're going to go to every game that a particular team's in, but there are going to be fans that are going to say, you know what, I'm not going to go until they make it to a certain point, and maybe the bowl games, the actual bowl games, but I think it's going to open opportunities for maybe other fans to go to games that they normally wouldn't. So let's look at the positive side, that people may go to games that normally wouldn't go, and the true fan who's traveling all over the country will wait for the bigger games.
One thing I think we need to find out, too, is I want to see what the ad revenue looks like for the TV part of this, because as you said, we can pretend that these sports care about the fans. They stopped caring a long time ago. But when we're going to have 11 playoff games, and that's what this playoff is going to amount to, and they're all unopposed windows, and America loves games with stakes. Win or go home stakes are always going to make people who have no interest in the teams want to watch. It won't reach the NFL level, but I wonder where we're setting the bar after year one when these networks go back to the advertisers and say, here's the number we can deliver, here's what we did deliver. I would think these numbers are just going to grow in ways that the college football business continues to explode.
Yeah, I think first of all, I think the numbers are going to be large no matter what. I don't think it has anything to do with who's attending the game. I think, and then you're going to have probably at least one upset, if you want to call it. And all of a sudden, that's going to create even more interest in this platform. So I think, this year is going to be the experiment. It's new, but I think at the end of the day, fans want this. And I think that...
Do you think networks, though, in their mind or advertisers have a number? Like, in other words, first round games, we're going to promise you, we think we're going to deliver 8 million viewers, 10 million, 12 million. And are they going to sell off that for the rounds upcoming or for the years upcoming the way they would in the NFL, where they can tell you, like history has shown us, we get 15 million for Wild Card Weekend or 22 million to set those ad revenues?
Yeah, I think the way it's going to work this year is they may do a package where they go ahead and include all the different rounds for some of these bigger advertisers, so they get the bigger companies, they have a guaranteed amount of revenue, have some spaces available, some spots available to sell for particular games. But I think that the networks are going to use it as a total package, and maybe not for the championship game, but for the first couple of rounds. And either way, they're going to make a ton of money. And remember, this money does proportionately trickle down to the teams. So everybody benefits from this playoff package financially, for sure. And, athletic directors will appreciate it. Conferences will appreciate it. And this may even trickle down to NIL future monies for players as this grows.
Okay, on that note, we just found out from Front Office Sports that Fox says it has sold out its ad inventory for the 30-second spots during the Super Bowl, and they were believed to be selling for more than $7 million. Those are 30-second spots. I wonder, just from a sheer business standpoint, there's only a small group of businesses, companies that can afford to spend that kind of money. And I always wonder what their gain or what their want is, because at the end of it, you've got to have ROI. Like, it's got to be worth, we spent $7 million on this ad and it brought us back something. At what point can you just not make that money back? And you sell it as it was the branding of getting in front of the biggest audience in TV.
Yeah, I think some of these bigger brands are not looking at the ROI. I mean, when you look at we'll use a McDonald's, for example, are they going to look at this as an ROI if they're in a commercial or not in a commercial? I think it's just part of their budget and to stay relevant. Some of the smaller companies that you see one-offs that are doing it this year may have something new, and they will weigh that. And it's interesting to see if they come back the following year as an advertiser. But it is amazing that they've already sold out the spots. We have no idea who's in the Super Bowl. We're at the halfway point of the NFL. We don't know if the Chiefs are going to go for a three-peat or it's going to be a new team, whether it's two new teams, whether it's small market teams.
The beauty is it doesn't matter. They've shown us that game is ratings proof.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, all right, one more thing I want to pick your brain on. So the Juan Soto sweepstakes is going to be the big talk of baseball's offseason, and it's believed the Mets have already reached out. Didn't waste any time. I always think what we see in the NBA is always fun, right? We get the visits and the tours, and you sit down and you're selling yourself to the team. I thought the Shohei Ohtani situation might give us some of that. There was only a few teams that could get in it. I wonder what the Juan Soto sweepstakes are going to look like. How much are these teams going to put a package together beyond just here's the money, but here's what we could do for your brand and here's what we could do for the Juan Soto business? Like, is that part of this beyond just here's 10 years and I don't know, $350 million?
Listen, there's always some of that in play now, especially with social media. Will it be like the extent that Ohtani had? Probably not. But I think that part of the recruiting package is always, even in the NFL or in the NBA, money talks. But at the end of the day, if there's equal money, what else are you bringing to the table? Whether it's playing for a certain coach, being in a certain market. Again, he's got he's a global figure, Juan Soto. He's young. He's, and I'm not surprised that the Mets, who have the deep pocket, the Dodgers, the Yankees, I'm sure will still be in play. So I think it's part of the overall sales pitch. And it'll be interesting to see if he goes on the public way, where he goes and meets with teams and talks about it at the winter meetings, and it becomes a public showcase.
And how long does it go? Does he want this to drag out?
Correct.
We're in January, or does he want it quick?
Correct.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating.
That'll be interesting to see what happens.
All right, Adam Schefter is going to join us around the corner to talk about the business of the NFL Insider. Scott Carr joins us next. He's the athletic director of FIU to talk about the business of college athletics. He'll join us next. All right, as we continue this week's episode of Deals and Deadlines, let's welcome in a man who knows all about making some of those deals and some of the business that is the college athletics game. He's FIU Athletic Director Scott Carr, and he's kind enough to join us here on the program this week. Scott, we appreciate the time. How are you?
Doing great. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure. So there are so many angles to college sports that have changed, but I know there's a different dynamic. I know when we talk about a Power 4 school, or we talk about an FIU and just how you go about the business model of making it work. And one of the reasons Hadley and I wanted to have you on, there are a few different, I think, interesting angles to this, right? So we just saw the college basketball season started. South Carolina had one of the games where they paid a smaller school to come play them. It was North Florida. Well, North Florida beat them, and on the way out the door, they were handed a $95,000 check. Explain to the audience just kind of why that matters to an FIU or a smaller school having to play those games and having a chance to make that kind of money.
Sure, absolutely. Those we call them guarantee games, right? Because you're guaranteed to get paid, but you're also guaranteed that they're not going to return the game back to you, right? It's not a home and home. So with those guarantee games, they are critical when you're in the group of 5, or are we group of 6 now? I'm not sure what the proper definition is, right? But when you're at our level and you're in those $20 to $40 million athletic budgets instead of the $100 to $200 million athletic budgets, it's critical to play those games and pick up those checks for $80,000, $95,000, $100,000, just to help fund your programs. And the money obviously is even larger on the football side, right? You're going after 7-figure checks that's going to help your entire department, not just your football program. But it's critical. It's a revenue stream that every year we as athletic directors at this level, we talk to our coaches about. We need you to play one of those, we need you to play 2 of those, 3 of those, whatever the number may be, just to really help the numbers work.
Scott, when you're dealing with football, how does it work? Do you initiate the communication with the Power 4 teams that you're interested in playing in one of these games, or do they come to you? And how is that negotiation as far as that payment go for those guaranteed games? Yeah,
so football is scheduling is challenging regardless of the sport, but football is more challenging, and it's much more in advance, right? So we have a guarantee game scheduled for next year already. We've got one for 2026 already for football, and we're looking at 27 and beyond. Basketball, you're typically scheduling those games, maybe 5-6 months before the season starts. But the way it works is on the football side is there's a gentleman named Dave Brown who used to schedule football games for ESPN, was with ESPN for a long time, and he's gone out on his own and really just is kind of the football master scheduler, if you will, right? And so he really helps everybody in the country. We'll talk to him and say, hey, Dave, we're looking for a guarantee game in 2027. And he'll say, well, here's the 4 or 5 teams that would have availability on the dates that you have. And then you end up, having conversations with those institutions and just working on, what dates you're going to work and what money's going to work, right? Just kind of negotiating the terms of the contract and what that payment will be, and you end up putting those games together. So I made it sound simple. It's more complicated sometimes, but it's huge. Again, those football games are just so huge because whether you're getting $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.5 million, those are just again, you're going to use some of that money to help your football program, but you're going to use it to help all your other programs as well.
So let's talk about one of the biggest changes, and we've seen it here in Georgia. We've seen it around the Southeast. What has NIL done for you, and how differently are you guys going about implementing it?
Sure. So it's changed the game, right? I mean, it's changed everything. I'll use the specific example here at FIU. This is I'm just now finishing up my third year here. So year one, we did a strategic plan. Wanted to get make sure we had the right vision and a roadmap, and shifted from that to let's work with we worked with AECOM and said let's put a facility master plan together, and we really wanted to put something together and get out there and start raising some money for facilities. And after December recruiting of 2023, I just said, we got to put the facilities plans on the shelf and just really pivot and really go all in on NIL and collective. So really the way it's changed it for me personally, for FIU, for what we're doing here is we've just said we've got to go out and talk to donors about giving money to NIL, not giving money to facilities. And we need facilities. We need to do some things, but the game has changed, and the game's the same in the fact that you need great coaches and you need great student athletes. You need great participants. So that's the same, but the way that you get those great participants is NIL. It's facilities and some of the other things are secondary now. It's about what's available for them financially.
Yeah, the kids, obviously, they see it not as much as the facilities. They want to see the money in their pocket. So, but I think a smart move that you made, even though you didn't do anything with the facilities necessarily, is why don't you talk about the branding, which was a one-of-a-kind branding in the football stadium being named after Pitbull and the value that brings to not only the football program, but to FIU in general.
Yes, absolutely. That was huge, right? It's one of those where everybody's working on building their brand. Best way you want to build your brand is go undefeated, right? Make the college football playoff, right? Win national championships. Those are the ways that you want to build your brand, of course. But at the same time, it's for us. We were sitting back saying, what are our strengths? What can we lean into here at FIU? And a strength we have at FIU is that we're in the city of Miami. And, what does that bring to you? We're we've been playing football for 24 years. There's not all that tradition that can kind of choke you sometimes of making some innovative and creative decisions. And so, being able to partner with Pitbull, with Armando, it was huge, right? Because we did the 14 days after, within 14 days, we did the media evaluation. We were about 89 million evaluation of from that announcement, and so that just brings that notoriety. I mean, the young people that we're recruiting, whether it's football or any other sport, they know about Pitbull Stadium, right? I mean, we're in Miami, Florida. You say something to somebody in Texas, somebody in California about FIU or Miami, there's a chance they're going to say, "Isn't that the Pitbull Stadium? Aren't you Pitbull Stadium?" So it was huge to partner with him. Not just the financial side. But his involvement and his name and his brand was huge, right? I mean, we're a worldwide brand now, right?
Look at you using some of his slogan there, the 305.
Yeah, sorry.
Absolutely. We're not just 305, we're worldwide, right? So that was it was huge for us financially, but it was huge for us brand wise, because if we had just partnered up with a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 100 company, that would have been great financially. But it's not going to move the needle, out in the brand space. It's just not going to move the needle. So it was huge partnering with him, and he wants us to be successful, and it's really going to help over the next few years. But as you guys know, it's even though people want us to be microwaves and Amazon Prime, it takes a little bit of time still to build programs and to build winners, especially when in the NIL space that it is today. It's harder for schools our size and with our fan base size to have that NIL money where you can just get out there and really flip your roster in a 6-month time frame. We're still building it the right way, the old fashioned way of getting some great high school student athletes to sign with us, bringing them in as freshmen and really developing them and wanting them to really help you that redshirt sophomore, junior year. And so we're building it the right way that way, but it takes a little bit longer. You'd love to be a microwave, but sometimes it takes a little longer than that.
Well, you got Pitbull working. You got a lot of good momentum. Scott, we appreciate the time so much. Thank you for spending it with us.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much for having me on. Sorry for the technical difficulty there, but really appreciate the time, and go Panthers.
Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, coming up, How do you become an NFL insider? We'll talk to the ultimate insider, Adam Schefter, about that, plus the relationships and the business behind social media being involved in what he does. He'll join us next. All right, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines, and we'll talk to a guy now who, really doesn't need an introduction from us, but I think the business of what he does is fascinating. He's Adam Schefter, NFL insider for ESPN, and he's kind enough to join us. Adam, we appreciate the time. I think the place to start with what you do, right? If you said to somebody, all right, to the 12-year-old, I want to be the next Adam Schefter.
Yeah.
I imagine you wouldn't have thought about that, but I guess this all goes back to our late, great friend Chris Mortensen and sort of laying the groundwork. So how did it happen for you?
Yeah, and by the way, we're recording this Tuesday at about noon, and Chris would have turned 73 tomorrow. November 7th is his birthday, and so he is never far from my thoughts. I think of him all the time. And, I didn't envision this. This is not what I thought my life would become. It's so far beyond anything I ever would have imagined, to be perfectly frank. I grew up a huge sports fan. That was the biggest thing. And when I went to college in Michigan and didn't get into the fraternity right away and knew I had to do something to keep myself busy, I went down to the football office to see if they needed somebody to pick up jock straps and hand out water bottles, just to be involved, and they didn't. And I went down to the basketball office to see if they needed somebody to be, and they didn't. So now I've been rejected by a fraternity that I didn't get into my freshman year, the football team, the basketball team, and literally because nobody would take me, I said, you know what, let me go volunteer for the student newspaper, the Michigan Daily, which turned away nobody, took on all comers. And that is the only reason that I started doing this, is because I had rejection everywhere else in my life. And, I think there's a lesson there that, when one door closes, another opens, and you just keep going and pushing forward. And, again, like I said, if I had gotten into the fraternity, I really believe I never would have gone down to the student newspaper. If I had gotten to pick up jock straps, I don't think I would have gone down to the student newspaper. And so, I guess, it worked out in a way that I never would have imagined. I did not envision doing this growing up. It kind of evolved and developed and morphed into this from the time that I started writing for the college newspaper to the time I got my first newspaper reporting job in Denver, Colorado at the age of 23 in 1990, to covering the Denver Broncos for almost 16 years, and then going to NFL Network for 5 years, and then being hired by ESPN in 2009. And by the way, when I was hired at ESPN in 2009, at that point in time, I did not have a Twitter account. I did not have an Instagram account. I did not have a Threads account. I did not have a Facebook account. I didn't have any of that. Social media was in its embryonic stages, and it's hard for me to think that ESPN hired me without having any accounts there at all. So I was not the person nor the reporter then that I am today, and it's just kind of grown and evolved, and I've been very fortunate to cover a great sport with a lot of tremendous people, and that's basically a thumbnail version of my professional life.
Let me first, before I ask you a question, Adam, let me just add, you are the same person you were back in 1991 when I got in the business.
Yeah.
You still take my phone calls. You still do right by people in the business, and kudos to you, because a lot of people do change when they get to different levels. But speaking of that, let me ask you this. One of the things that I talk about all the time is what happens behind the scenes in our business. And now that we really do have social media as an ally, you've got to use it to your client's best interests. And I know you and I have done stuff where I provided information to you to benefit my clients. You've given me information based upon things you've heard as we lead up to free agency or a trade deadline based upon your contacts. Talk about how that relationship with the agent community and the NFL community with the management side is important in developing your framework.
Well, Hallie, I just think it's not even about being friendly with agents or front offices or coaching staffs or players or whoever it may be. I think it's, whether it's this job or any other job, it's just all about relationships. And it goes back to what you said, is trying to be fair and treat people right, period. Whatever you do, whether it's this business or another business. And again, if you're fair with people, if you treat them right, then inevitably, you'd like to think that they'll do the same for you. And, again, it's always gratifying to me. Like yesterday was the trade deadline day. It's gratifying to me when people think of me and say, heads up, this is coming down. Be ready for this. We're trading this player. We're getting this player. I'm grateful to that. Now, let me say this. Of course, as a reporter, you always like to get the story and appreciate getting the story. But I often step back and look and think it's pretty neat that somebody thought of you at a certain moment and you popped into their head and they were looking out for you. Like, that to me matters. It just matters. And it means more than the story. And it's about the relationship. And so that's why I say in any line of work, in any business, it's about the relationships. And you trying to have a good, strong relationship with people so that you can essentially look after each other.
Adam, let me ask you about what you do, the time involved, right? We just watched Woj walk away from a very lucrative position because he wanted to go where his heart told him to go. It's not digging ditches, and I don't want to make it that, but your phone's connected to you 24/7. We're talking to you right now. I'm sure you're looking down at it. You go to sleep. I don't know if it's tucked under the pillow or when you're in the shower, it's there.
Right next to me, right next to me. Yep.
So
I shower. Sometimes I know something's going on. I'm jumping in the shower. I put the phone up against the handle right there so I can see, when the text is going off, so I could jump out of the shower and go tweet some breaking news. Yeah, I mean, that has happened, yes.
So with that in mind, though, how does that change daily life? Like, wife and kids and normal things, it's always kind of there, and it's always there.
Yeah. Well, that's the job. And again, I think that many people in our world today, they live their jobs. Like, that's what it is. I think people in the sports business, the entertainment business, they're not 9 to 5 jobs. If you're looking for somebody to leave the house at 8:30 and get home at 5:30 and sit down to have dinner every night, it's just not happening in my world. If you're looking for somebody to be free on the weekend, so you go to apple picking and go drink apple cider and pick donuts, that ain't happening, right? So there's a huge sacrifice for my family that they make because we don't live a normal existence. But that's no different than a lot of families, right? There are a lot of people that are working night shifts. There are people that are working weekend shifts. There are people working really early in the morning. So it's just my job. That's my job. And my job happens to be public because, you're tweeting or you're on ESPN or someone's listening to your podcast, whatever it may be. But it's just a little bit more public. But again, there are a lot of people doing exactly what I do, just different. It's just not in people's faces the way that my job, for better or worse, sometimes is.
And it's even for better because obviously your daughter's following your footsteps when she's out there doing stuff.
Well, I mean, maybe. We'll see. That's up to her. She's in her 4th year working for Nickelodeon on a show called Slime Time that airs on Wednesday night, and she does an interview with a player each week. And tonight, when it airs at 7:30 on Nickelodeon, she'll be interviewing A.J. Brown, the Eagles wide receiver. So that to me, that's we all want what's the expression? You're only as happy as your least happy child,
kid,
right? And so, as a 16-year-old girl, there are days that she's very happy and there are days that she's not so happy.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm none.
Yeah,
with a 13-year-old daughter, no clue.
Oh my gosh! And let me tell you, it gets harder. Right?
I was going to say, it doesn't get any easier.
I'll call you off the air.
Yeah, the teenage years, that's really challenging and difficult, but it's incredibly gratifying just to watch her. It's also nerve-wracking because, somebody will say something, I'm like, ooh, I hope she follows with this. Like, she's got to ask that.
Are you you're coaching behind the scenes with her?
Oh, well, you know what? Again, being that I don't have very many athletic abilities and I don't have children in sports, but it's the equivalent of that, right? You're watching your kid play sport. No, go, do it, go. Well, I'm watching her do the interviews in my house with the play. Follow this. Oh, please follow. No, don't go there. No, so it's just a different version of it. It's a non-athletic skill version of it. Yes.
That's beautiful. All right, before we let you go, because we talked about the social media aspect, right?
Yeah.
And we always talk about being first or getting it right. How nerve-wracking is it that in your mind, and maybe you don't pay attention, that I want to be ahead of Rappaport, or I want to be ahead of Glazer, or I want to be ahead of whatever somebody is, but to make sure I get the accuracy right, and I mean this, and I'm not kidding. Do you go back and proofread the tweet? Because I would have 2 or 3 words that I know trying to get it out so quick that I would mess up, and nobody's forgiving of that stuff in the social media world. So how much is all that on your mind?
I think the older I've gotten, the more careful I've gotten. As an example, yesterday, kind of knew that the Marshawn Lattimore trade was coming down. I was on Pat McAfee talking about it. Had an idea it might be Washington. And I get a text from somebody, hey, getting done, with like okay. And I'm like okay to report, okay, it's done. And I'm waiting, and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, check with this team, okay. And so, like the text came in, I think it was 12:01. And, now could I, and I think 10 years ago I might have just put it out, like, trade is getting done. But now it's like I'm making double sure, and I'm triple checking, and if somebody gets ahead of you, you don't like that, but you do your best to fact check and be as accurate as possible. That is obviously very important, and something that I spend extra time on because I have to in my position.
Well, Adam, it's a great story. It's a great journey. Continued success. Appreciate you spending some time with us, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Adam, thanks, man. Appreciate it, buddy.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you very much, and have a great show.
Thank you, Adam.
Take care.
All right, Hadley, here's what I need you to do for me. Next time you have a big scoop, you don't go to Schefter, you come to me.
You know what? You're right.
My reach, my brand.
The 5 followers versus his 11 million. I've got to weigh that.
Sorry, the Real Matt Atlanta Army on Twitter is a very big contingent, so that hurts. Good stuff. We'll do it again next week. Hadley, thank you. Thanks to Adam Schefter. Thanks to Scott Carr for joining us. And thank you guys. I'll remind you, please subscribe to the podcast. Wherever it is you get your favorite pods, we're available on all podcast platforms, as well as the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. We will do it once a week. Pass the word. Give us a like, a retweet, a heart. I don't know, whatever you want to do to make the show a success, we would appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time.